Hello, everyone. We've been talking about the ego quite a bit in teacher training for the past couple of months because we're in Manipura chakra mode, and the ego is linked to Manipura chakra. And we've had some interesting conversations because the subject of the ego is a little bit confusing, I think, for some people, for a lot of people. We have this notion that the ego is a bad thing. And also, when I'm talking about the ego here in this video, just for any psychologist, I'm not using the term ego in terms of Western psychology. So if you have that understanding of the ego, this might not make sense to you. This is more of a yogic point of view, and then my point of view through the yogic point of view regarding the ego. So we keep hearing that somebody has a big ego or they have a lot of ego, and rarely, I don't know if ever, does anyone talk positively about the ego? I'm not sure. But normally we hear bad things about the ego. So I just wanted to help clarify a little bit about what the ego is and how it behaves. So the first thing is that the ego is just a mechanism. It's not good nor bad. Just as anything in yoga is. There's no good, there's no bad, things just are. But the ego is a thing. It is what allows a human being to differentiate him or herself from anything else that exists. Another person, an object, an animal, from anything. And it's just that part, that system that says, I am me and I am not that. Now, we can say that, yes, we're all connected, we're all one, we know that. That's on a certain level. It's on a higher cosmic level. But on this planet as well, on another plane, we are separated from each other. This is what allows us to have an experience of life on Earth. Right? Because otherwise we would remain a non-embodied being. But once we are incarnated into a body, we have to be able to say, I am me and I am not that. And this is my experience and that is not my experience. So first of all, the ego is a mechanism. It's that which allows us to say that I am me and I am not something else. And it allows us to have an experience of this incarnation on this planet. Okay, so that's the first thing. The next thing is the ego will behave in a certain way. And when we talk about Manipura chakra, for example, or any chakra, we can talk about excess or deficiency. And so we can also talk about the ego in terms of excess or deficiency. A lot of times when we perceive someone as having a big ego, or we label someone as having a big ego, we're not really understanding how the ego behaves. It's just kind of like some little light psychology that we think we know something and we say, oh, he's such a big ego. But maybe not. Because oftentimes what we perceive as behavior as a big ego is actually a deficiency in ego. It's a weak ego. Now, when we have a weak ego, right, this is, now we're talking about stereotypical behavior. Most human beings are not stereotypical. We fluctuate from deficiency to excess, back to balance, and there's a lot of change. But now I just want to talk in stereotypical terms so that we can have a clear understanding. So when someone has a weak ego, they don't have that strong mechanism that says, I am me, and they are they. This is not, I am not that, and this differentiation thing, this individuation. So they constantly have to be doing that. They constantly have to be criticizing and judging, because they have to find a way to make themselves exist on a certain level. The ego says that I exist, I am here, I am an individual, I am me. So someone who has this constant chatter in their head of criticism And judgment is someone who needs constantly to say, I'm not like that, I'm not like that, I'm not like that. He's better than me, I'm better than her. This kind of thing, this comparison has to happen all the time in order for this ego to exist, in order for this person to exist. Someone with a weak ego often also is someone who is mean to other people. So sometimes, say for example, someone is making fun of somebody else. We know, we have this kind of talk on TV talk shows, especially about bullying. We know that, like, you know, the bully is the weaker one. It's someone that has to prove something to the world, and he only hurts people in order to make himself feel better, or if it's a girl, bully is she. But that's a weak ego. So in order for me to exist, I must make someone feel less than me so that I can feel powerful and I can exist. Also someone who uses humor in a way to make others feel bad. So Manipura chakra has to do with a sense of humor. But when someone's humor hurts somebody else, that's not a big ego, that's a weak ego, right? When we go to the other side and talk about a strong ego or an excess, especially when we talk about a sense of humor, so that's someone who just thinks they're so hilarious. They don't have that intention to hurt anyone. It's someone who might come into a party and tell jokes and laugh loud, and nobody really thinks they're funny. They think they're hilarious, but nobody really thinks they're funny. So that's kind of like the characteristic of an excess, is someone who's so sure of themselves that they don't even need to do this comparison thing, because there's not even a question. It's someone who has strong objectives, for example, and can go after those objectives and can step all over people to get them, but they don't really see it. They don't step all over people in order to hurt other people. They step all over people because they just have that power to go after that objective and are not aware of anything else but themselves. Someone who, if we take that same example, someone who has a weaker ego will step all over people in order to hurt other people, in order to be better than them. So what's tricky in this is that sometimes the external behavior looks the same, but you have to go back and kind of question the intention behind that behavior in order to really understand if that person is in excess, has a really strong ego, or someone has a weak ego. And so what is a balanced ego? So an ego that is balanced is someone who is quite aware of, I am me, I am not that, and just totally fine with that. They don't need to be constantly making comparisons and judging, because it's just, we're just different. I do what I do, you do what you do, and that's totally fine. Someone who has a balanced ego has a balanced sense of humor. Someone who has balanced ego is very warm and generous, but at the same time is not a martyr, doesn't become a victim. It doesn't have this victim mentality. So someone who's aware of other people's feelings and balances the needs of somebody else with their own needs in order to make a smart, balanced decision about a course of action, for example. So it's pretty simple when you just kind of break it down. So an ego is just a mechanism that says, I am me, I'm not you. A weak ego is someone who needs to constantly be proving something, be proving that they exist, be proving that they're good at something. And someone with a strong ego just knows for a fact that they're just the best, and that's how it is. So I just invite you to kind of take this information and maybe through this filter, start to observe behavior around you and start to observe your own behavior. And if you're interested in talking about it, you can follow the link right under this video and we can talk about it on my website. Okay, have a great day. Bye-bye.